The weather forecast had been clear for 3 days running, but Marcus Chen didn't trust it. 22 years as a backcountry ranger taught you to read signs the satellites couldn't see. The way chickadees went silent 2 hours before a storm. How the light turned flat and colorless when pressure systems collided overhead. The peculiar stillness in the pines that meant the mountain was holding its breath. He stood outside the ranger station at 6:47 a.m., thermometer reading -18°C, watching the western sky bruise purple-black behind the ridgeline. The storm would hit by noon. He gave it 3 hours, maybe 4 before the outpost lost power. Inside the small wooden structure, warmth from the wood stove barely pushed back the cold seeping through gaps in the window frames. Marcus moved methodically through his morning checklist, the kind of routine that kept people alive in places like this. He filled both 5-gallon water containers because the electric pump would die with the power. He split extra kindling and stacked it near the stove where it would stay dry. He checked the propane levels on the backup heater, tested the flashlights, confirmed the satellite phone had a full charge, even though he knew from experience it would probably fail in heavy snow. The handheld GPS was charged too, though its screen would barely function once temperatures dropped another 10 degrees. Then he moved to the emergency communications kit, pulling out the device that had become something of a joke among the other rangers. A NOAA emergency radio, 20 years old, built like a brick with a hand crank on the side, and a telescoping antenna that Marcus kept wrapped in electrical tape to seal the connections. The thing weighed maybe 2 pounds, its orange plastic shell scratched and faded, the frequency dial loose enough that you had to tape it in place once you found the right channel. It ran on 3 AA batteries or the hand crank, and it could transmit on specific emergency frequencies if you knew which ones to use and had the right license, which Marcus did. "Still carrying that museum piece?" Jake Reeves had said 2 weeks ago, the younger ranger laughing as he showed off his satellite communicator, sleek and touchscreen, with GPS integration and two-way messaging that could reach anywhere on the planet as long as you had a clear view of the sky. "My grandfather had one of those. Pretty sure it's technically antique now." Marcus had smiled but hadn't argued. There was no point explaining to someone who'd only worked 3 seasons that redundancy wasn't about having backups for your backups. It was about having backups that worked on completely different principles, so that when one system failed, you still had options. The satellite units were brilliant until weather turned them into expensive paperweights. Cell phones were miracles until cold killed their lithium batteries in an hour. Even the satellite phone Marcus carried was really only good for maybe one emergency call in a whiteout before ice formed on the antenna or the signal scattered into static. But a hand crank radio? That was different physics entirely. Mechanical energy converted to electrical charge, stored in a small internal battery that could be topped up with 30 seconds of cranking. No satellites required, no cell towers, no external power source. Just your arm, the generator coils, and whatever emergency frequency you could reach. The ranger station was positioned on a high point with relatively clear line of sight to the Valley Emergency Services Tower, 15 kilometers southeast. In good conditions, Marcus could reach dispatch on the radio's emergency channel. In bad conditions, he could reach them if he cranked hard enough to boost the signal and if atmospheric conditions didn't scatter everything into noise. He tested it now, cranking the handle for 45 seconds, feeling the resistance as the internal generator spun up, watching the small LED indicator glow green. He extended the antenna, dialed to the emergency frequency, and pressed the transmission button. "Station 4 to dispatch, radio check." Static hissed for 3 seconds before the response crackled through. "Dispatch to Station 4. We read you Strength 3, Marcus. That the old Grundig?" "It is. Just making sure the channel's clear before weather hits." "Copy that. Forecast models updated 30 minutes ago. You're looking at sustained winds 40 kilometers per hour, gusts to 70. Snow accumulation 15 to 20 centimeters in the first 6 hours. Temperature dropping to -25 by evening. We're pulling everyone off the high trails and closing the access roads at 1000 hours." Marcus acknowledged and signed off, then sat at the desk and opened the incident log. writing the date and weather update in neat block letters. December 28th. Deep winter. The holiday week between Christmas and New Year meant fewer people in the backcountry than usual, but not zero. There were always a few. The experienced mountaineers who preferred winter solitude, the ice climbers who came for the frozen waterfalls, the occasional overconfident group who underestimated what -20 felt like when wind stripped heat from exposed skin. The morning passed in preparation. Marcus reinforced the woodpile tarp with extra bungee cords, brought the backup propane tanks inside so they wouldn't freeze, checked the storm shutters on the windows. He ate a large breakfast, oatmeal with peanut butter and dried fruit, 2 cups of coffee, because he might not get another proper meal for a while. The sky continued to darken, the purple-black spreading like a bruise across the western horizon, advancing with the peculiar speed that meant the storm was bigger than forecast models predicted. At 10:23 a.m., the satellite phone buzzed. Marcus answered, listening to the dispatcher's voice, tinny and compressed. Station 4, we've got a situation developing. Group of 3 registered a backcountry permit yesterday, supposed to return this morning. They're not back. Vehicle still at the trailhead. Permit lists them as hiking the North Ridge Circuit. Estimated return by 9 a.m. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. The North Ridge Circuit was a beautiful summer hike, manageable for experienced hikers in good conditions. In winter, with a storm coming, it became a maze of exposed sections where wind could knock you down, false trails that led to cliff edges hidden by cornices, and avalanche chutes that could bury you under 3 meters of snow in seconds. What's their gear level? Permit lists standard winter equipment. They've got avalanche beacons. One of them has a cell phone registered, but it's going straight to voicemail. Could be dead battery, could be there in a dead zone, could be the cold killed it. I can do a preliminary sweep of the lower section before the storm hits full force, but if they're high on the ridge when conditions deteriorate, I won't be able to reach them safely. Marcus was already pulling on his outer layers as he spoke, thinking through routes and timing. If they're smart, they'll hunker down and wait it out. If they're not smart, they'll try to navigate in whiteout, and that's when people die. Copy. We're organizing a search response for First Light tomorrow if they don't turn up. For now, we need you to check the lower trail sections and the 2 emergency shelters on the circuit. If you find signs they passed through, mark it and return to the station before visibility drops. Do not attempt anything heroic. Marcus ended the call and finished gearing up. Base layers that wicked moisture, insulating mid-layers, waterproof shell with sealed seams, 2 pairs of gloves with liners, goggles, balaclava, the kind of systematic layering that kept you alive. He packed the backpack with emergency supplies, space blankets, chemical heat packs, extra food, water, first aid kit, avalanche probe and shovel, headlamp with fresh batteries. He strapped on the snowshoes, slung the pack onto his shoulders, and paused to grab the hand-crank radio almost as an afterthought, stuffing it into the outer pocket where he could reach it without removing the pack. The cold hit like a physical force the moment he stepped outside. The wind had picked up, not yet the screaming gale forecast, but enough to make his eyes water behind the goggles, enough to carry the first scattered snowflakes horizontal across his field of vision. He locked the station door and set out northeast toward the trailhead, moving at the steady pace that ate up distance without burning through energy reserves you'd need later. The first hour of searching revealed nothing. The trailhead showed evidence of the group's passage, boot prints frozen in the hard-packed snow from yesterday. No signs of return. Marcus followed their track upward, reading the story in the compressed snow. 3 people, moving in single file, one wearing what looked like trail runners instead of proper winter boots, which was a bad sign. Trail runners in -18. That person's feet were already cold when they started, and cold feet meant poor decisions later. He reached the first emergency shelter at 11:47 a.m. It was nothing fancy, a 3-sided wooden structure with a slanted roof, open on one side to the elements but offering windbreak and a raised floor to keep you off the snow. Empty. No signs of recent use. Marcus marked it in his notebook and continued upward, watching the sky, feeling the wind strengthen. Snow was falling harder now, not yet a whiteout but getting there. the kind of snow that erased your own boot prints within 20 minutes. The second shelter was another 40 minutes higher, accessible via a steep section where the trail switched back through dense pine. Marcus was breathing hard by the time he reached it, frost forming on his balaclava from exhaled moisture. This shelter showed signs of use, a broken striker from a ferro rod lying in the corner, scuff marks in the old snow on the raised platform. Someone had stopped here recently, possibly yesterday. The group? Impossible to tell. He documented it and checked his watch. 12:31 p.m. He needed to turn back. The storm was accelerating faster than predicted. He radioed the station from the shelter using his handheld VHF. Station 4 to dispatch. I've reached the upper shelter on the North Ridge Circuit. Evidence of recent use but no current occupation. Visibility dropping fast. I'm returning to base now. The response came through crackling with static. Copy Station 4, new development. We just received a text message from one of the missing hikers. Message is fragmented but mentions stuck and can't see trail. Sent 17 minutes ago from a location that pings to the High Ridge section. Phone went dead immediately after. We're trying to re-establish contact but not getting through. Marcus stared at the falling snow, mind racing through options. The High Ridge section was another 90 minutes above his current position in good conditions. In deteriorating visibility with wind, maybe 2 hours. If he pushed upward now, he could potentially reach them before full whiteout. But he'd be risking his own life in the process, and if conditions worsened as fast as predicted, he'd be stranded up there with them instead of positioned at the station where he could coordinate rescue efforts. "What's the call?" he asked dispatch, knowing they were weighing the same variables. There was a long pause before the response came. "Professional judgment is yours, Marcus. You know the terrain and conditions better than anyone. We can't order you into something that violates safe protocols. But those people are in serious trouble." Marcus made the decision in 5 seconds. "I'm returning to station. If they texted 17 minutes ago, they still have some phone power. If I can get them to conserve battery and use it only to receive, I can talk them through building an emergency shelter and waiting out the storm. Attempting extraction in these conditions puts 5 lives at risk instead of 3. I'll coordinate from base where I have power and communications." "Copy that. Good call. Get back safe. We'll keep trying to reach their phone." The descent took 53 minutes, fighting wind that gusted hard enough to make him brace against his trekking poles, snow that stung exposed skin like needles. Marcus moved fast but carefully, knowing a twisted ankle now would turn him into another victim requiring rescue. The temperature had dropped further. His thermometer read -21 and falling. The wind chill was probably closer to -35. He reached the station at 1:38 p.m., pushed through the door, and was hit by the comparative warmth inside. The wood stove was still burning, temperature inside maybe 10 degrees Celsius, warm enough that his goggles fogged instantly. He stripped off the outer layers, hung them to dry, and immediately moved to the communications desk. The satellite phone showed no missed calls. He tried calling dispatch directly, but the signal was already degrading, the voice breaking up into digital fragments. He managed to confirm they still hadn't reached the stranded hiker's phone before the connection died entirely. Marcus switched to the VHF handheld, still functional but with limited range in the storm. "Station 4 to dispatch, I'm back at base. What's the status?" "We reached the phone twice more, but the person answering sounds like a woman, maybe mid-20s. Says they can't see more than 3 meters. They're somewhere on the exposed ridge. They tried to descend but couldn't find the trail. They built a crude windbreak with their packs, but they don't have proper shelter equipment. Battery is critical. Phone is down to 4%. We told them to turn it completely off and only power up once every 30 minutes to check for messages." She sounded scared. Coherent, but scared. Scared was better than hypothermic confusion. Scared meant they still had decision-making capability. "Can you text me their last known coordinates?" "Sending now." Marcus's phone buzzed with the incoming data. He pulled up the topographic map on his tablet, marking the coordinates, studying the terrain. They were high, just below the ridgeline in an area where the trail traversed across an open slope. Exposed to wind, no natural shelter. But there was a cluster of large boulders marked on the map about 80 meters downslope from their position, a location that might offer windbreak if they could find it. The problem was navigation. In whiteout, 80 meters might as well be 8 kilometers. People walked in circles. They got disoriented. They wandered away from safety into danger. "All right," Marcus said, mind working through the plan. "Here's what we're going to do. Next time they power up the phone, you tell them to stay exactly where they are. Don't move. Tell them to dig down into the snow to create a pit shelter. Scoop out snow to below wind level, pack it down, use their packs as windbreak. Tell them to get into their emergency blankets if they have them. Huddle together for warmth. I'll talk them through it once you make contact." "Copy. And Marcus?" "The power company just confirmed lines are down across the valley. Outages spreading. We're on backup generators here, but we don't know how long they'll hold. If we lose power, the emergency frequencies might be your only way to reach us." Marcus looked at the lights in the station, knowing they could flicker out any moment. He went to the circuit breaker, confirmed the solar panels on the roof were already useless under heavy snow, checked the small backup battery system. It might give him 2 hours of minimal power, enough to keep the satellite modem running if signals could get through, but nothing more. He made the decision immediately, turned off everything except the essential lights and the communications equipment. The wood stove would provide heat. He didn't need electricity for that. At 2:11 p.m., the power died. The lights went out, the refrigerator stopped humming, and the sudden silence was profound, except for the roar of wind outside. Marcus switched on a battery lantern, checked his watch, and moved to the emergency equipment locker. He pulled out the hand crank radio, set it on the desk, and began cranking the handle. 30 seconds of steady rotation brought the LED indicator to green. He extended the antenna fully, ran it out through the small communications port in the wall that he'd installed years ago, specifically for situations like this, and dialed to the emergency frequency. "Station 4 to dispatch, do you copy?" The response was weak but audible through heavy static. "We copy Station 4, barely. Atmospheric conditions are degrading all signals. We've got maybe 60% communication reliability right now and dropping." "Understood. Status on the stranded hikers?" "We made contact 4 minutes ago. Woman's name is Sarah Chen, no relation to you. She says they're trying to dig a pit like we instructed, but the snow is wind-packed and hard. Their hands are getting numb. They have 1 space blanket between 3 people. Temperature at their location is estimated -24 with wind chill approaching -40. One member of their group, male named David, is showing signs of hypothermia, confusion, slurred speech. The third person, Emily, is still functional, but scared. Sarah is trying to hold it together, but you can hear it in her voice. They're in trouble." Marcus felt the weight of it settle in his chest. 3 people, scared and cold, somewhere high on the mountain in conditions that could kill them in hours if they didn't get proper shelter. And rescue wouldn't be possible until the storm passed, which might not be until tomorrow morning at the earliest. That meant keeping them alive through the night, keeping them making good decisions, keeping them from panicking and doing something fatal like trying to navigate in whiteout. "Next time they power up, I need you to patch me through directly if possible. I want to talk to Sarah. I need to assess her mental state and give specific instructions." "We'll try, but our communications are getting spotty. If we lose contact with you, what's your backup plan?" Marcus looked at the hand crank radio sitting on the desk, the orange plastic shell scratched and faded, the device that Jake Reeves had mocked as a museum piece. "I'll maintain continuous transmission on the emergency frequency. If your equipment is still receiving, you'll hear me. I'll broadcast instructions and updates every 10 minutes. If the hiker's phone is still functional, you can relay my instructions to them through text messages or voice calls when possible. We keep the chain of communication alive any way we can." "Copy that. Stand by for relay attempt." Marcus cranked the radio again, feeling the mechanical resistance, watching the LED glow brighter. The device was designed to run for roughly 45 minutes to an hour on a full crank charge, but that assumed normal transmission loads. Continuous transmission would drain it faster. He'd need to crank every 20 minutes, maybe 15 to be safe. That meant for however long this lasted, He'd be tied to this desk, maintaining the signal, keeping the channel open. At 2:27 p.m., dispatch crackled through with a voice patch. Station 4, we have Sarah on the line. Connecting now. There was a burst of static, then a woman's voice, tight with fear and cold. Hello, can anyone hear me? We're stuck up here and David is getting worse. He's not making sense and I don't know what to do. Marcus kept his voice calm, professional, the tone he'd used 100 times before in emergencies. Sarah, my name is Marcus Chen. I'm the ranger at Station 4. I can hear you clearly. You're doing great just by staying in contact. I need you to listen carefully and follow my instructions exactly. Can you do that? Yes. Okay, but David, I know. We're going to help David, but I need you to be my eyes and hands up there. First question. How deep have you been able to dig into the snow? Maybe half a meter? It's really hard packed. Emily's trying to dig with a flat rock, but our hands are so cold. Good. Half a meter is a start. I need you to dig deeper if possible, get below the wind level. The goal is to create a pit where you can sit with your backs against the downwind wall. You're essentially building a snow cave, but simpler. Pack the snow you remove into blocks and stack them on the windward side to build up extra protection. Every 10 centimeters deeper you dig, you're getting out of wind that's trying to kill you. Can Emily keep digging? She's trying. Her hands, we only have one pair of good gloves between us. We've been switching them. All right, new priority. Stop digging for a moment. Take that space blanket and wrap it around David immediately. Get him into the pit you've already dug. Get him below wind level. Tuck the blanket around him. Make sure it's sealed at the bottom so warm air doesn't escape. Then you and Emily huddle on either side of him. Your body heat is going to keep him alive. Understand? Yes, okay, we're doing it now. Marcus could hear wind roaring in the background through her phone, the kind of wind that drowned out thought. Sarah, I need you to tell me about the confusion you're seeing in David. What's he saying? He keeps talking about being hot. He tried to take his jacket off 10 minutes ago and we had to stop him. He's not shivering anymore. That's bad, right? I remember reading that's bad. You're right. That's a sign of severe hypothermia. His body is shutting down non-essential functions to preserve the core. The fact that he stopped shivering means his core temperature has dropped significantly. Getting him wrapped in that blanket and between you and Emily is critical. You need to be his external heat source. Talk to him. Keep him conscious if possible. If he has any chemical heat packs, activate them and put them against his core, his chest and abdomen, not his hands or feet. We used our heat packs hours ago. They're dead now. Marcus made a note, thinking through alternatives. Okay, then it's body heat. Stay pressed against him. If you have any food left, try to get him to eat something. Calories turn into heat. Even a small amount helps. We have maybe 2 energy bars left. We ate most of our food yesterday thinking we'd be back this morning. Split one of those bars between all 3 of you right now. Eat it slowly. Your bodies need the fuel. The connection was getting worse, Sarah's voice cutting in and out. Battery at 2%, can't keep phone on. Sarah, listen carefully. Turn the phone off right now. Conserve that last 2%. Power it on again in exactly 30 minutes for a maximum of 60 seconds. Just long enough to check if we've sent you any new instructions. We'll keep this pattern going. Turn it on, check for messages, turn it off. Understood? Yes, but what if? You're doing everything right. You're keeping your group alive. Keep David warm, stay in that pit, wait for the next check-in. I'll be here the entire time. The connection went dead. Marcus immediately began cranking the radio, bringing the charge back to full, and transmitted on the emergency frequency. Station 4 to dispatch, do you copy? The response was faint, scattered with static. Barely copying, Station 4. Signal strength is very poor. That last relay probably used up significant phone battery. Understood. Next contact in 30 minutes. I'll maintain transmission on this frequency. If you can receive me, acknowledge every 10 minutes so I know the channel is open. We'll try. No guarantees. Atmospheric conditions are severe. We might lose you completely. Marcus settled into the chair, the hand crank radio in front of him and looked at his watch. 2:44 p.m. 30 minutes until the next phone check-in. He began cranking the handle again, maintaining the rhythm, feeling the resistance in his forearm, watching the LED indicator hold steady green. The mathematics were straightforward. If he needed to crank every 15 minutes to keep the radio operational, and if this situation extended for hours, he'd be cranking dozens of times, maybe more than 100 times before it ended. His arm would fatigue, the muscles would burn and cramp, but that was the deal. That was the price of keeping the channel open, maintaining the lifeline to 3 people who would die without it. He transmitted again, his voice calm and clear. Station 4 maintaining continuous emergency frequency transmission. Time is 14:47 hours. 3 hikers stranded on North Ridge Circuit at coordinates transmitted previously. 1 hypothermic victim, condition serious. 2 others functional but cold. Phone battery critical. Next check-in scheduled for 15:14. Weather conditions severe with wind gusts estimated 70 kilometers per hour. Temperature -24. Wind chill -40. Visibility near 0. Rescue not possible until weather clears. All stations monitoring this frequency. Please acknowledge if receiving. The static hissed back at him. No response. He waited 30 seconds and transmitted again. Same message, keeping the channel active. Even if no one was responding, as long as he was transmitting, there was a chance someone was receiving. The emergency frequency was monitored by multiple agencies: Forest Service, Search and Rescue, emergency services in 3 counties. If any of them were still operational, if their equipment was still functional, they'd hear him. He cranked the radio again, feeling the mechanism turn smoothly despite its age. 20 years old and still functioning exactly as designed. The engineers who built this had understood something fundamental. In emergencies, simplicity was more reliable than complexity. No microprocessors to freeze, no lithium batteries to die in the cold. Just a generator, some coils, and basic electronics that could survive conditions that would kill modern devices. The minutes crawled past. Marcus transmitted every 10 minutes, cranked every 15, maintained the rhythm. His arm began to ache, but he ignored it, knowing this was just the beginning. At 3:14 p.m., he transmitted the scheduled check-in message. Station 4 to all stations, time is 15:14. Hikers should be powering up phone for status check now. Attempting to relay any new information. If dispatch can hear this transmission, please confirm you have phone contact. The static was unbroken. No response. Marcus waited 2 minutes and transmitted again. Same message. Still nothing. The atmospheric conditions were scattering radio signals into noise, or dispatch had lost power completely, or both. He was alone on the frequency, broadcasting into the storm, hoping someone somewhere was listening. He cranked the radio again, feeling the burn in his forearm now, a deep ache that would only get worse. The temperature inside the station was dropping. Even with the wood stove burning, cold was seeping in through every gap in the structure, through the walls, through the floor, radiating from the windows. He added more wood to the stove, adjusted the damper to maximize heat output, and returned to the desk. At 3:31 p.m., the handheld VHF radio suddenly crackled to life. Not dispatch. A different voice, male, older, accented. To any station, this is Dr. Rajesh Patel. I'm monitoring emergency frequencies from the Valley Medical Center. We're receiving your transmissions very faintly, Station 4. We copy your situation. We cannot relay to the hikers directly, but we are in contact with dispatch via landline. They report the hiker's phone is dead. Last contact was at 15:17. Sarah confirmed they are in the pit shelter. David is wrapped in the space blanket between them. They are trying to stay warm. Battery died while she was talking. No further contact possible. Marcus felt his chest tighten. No phone meant no direct communication. The hikers were in a pit somewhere on the mountain, with no way to receive instructions, no way to report if conditions changed, no way to call for help if David's condition deteriorated further. They were effectively isolated, relying entirely on whatever decisions they made in that pit, whatever they remembered from his instructions. He transmitted on the emergency frequency. Station 4 copies, Dr. Patel. Phone contact lost. I'll continue transmitting on this frequency with instructions and updates in case the hikers have any emergency radio equipment we don't know about. Please relay to dispatch that the hikers need to stay in that pit shelter. Keep David warm with body heat, ration their remaining food, and do not attempt to navigate. Repeat, do not attempt to move from their current location. Understood, Station 4. We'll relay through landline. Be advised, power outages are now affecting multiple areas. We're on generator backup, fuel reserves for approximately 6 more hours. After that, we may lose communications as well. 6 hours. Marcus looked at his watch. 3:33 p.m. That meant communications might hold until 9:30 p.m. if they were lucky. After that, he'd be transmitting into complete silence with no confirmation anyone was receiving. But he'd keep transmitting anyway because the alternative was giving up, and giving up meant 3 people dying on the mountain. He cranked the radio again, arms already trembling slightly from fatigue. The mechanical motion was becoming automatic. Reach for the handle, grip it firmly. Rotate in steady circles. Feel the resistance. Watch the LED glow green. Release. Repeat. 15 minutes later, crank again. He settled into the rhythm, knowing he was committing to this for the duration, however long that turned out to be. At 4 p.m., he transmitted a detailed survival briefing, speaking slowly and clearly, hoping that if anyone was listening, dispatch, search and rescue, even the hikers if they somehow had a radio, they would understand. Station 4 emergency broadcast. Time is 16 hours. For the stranded hikers, if you can hear this transmission, listen carefully. You are doing the right thing by staying in your shelter. The storm will pass, but not until tomorrow morning at the earliest. Your survival depends on 3 priorities: maintaining body heat, staying hydrated, and preventing panic. Keep David between you. Your combined body heat is his best chance. If you have water, drink small amounts every 30 minutes. If your water is frozen, warm it against your core under your jackets. Do not eat snow directly. It will lower your core temperature. If you need to urinate, do it away from your shelter but minimize exposure time. Do not fall asleep all at once. Stay in rotation. 1 person awake at all times to monitor conditions and prevent anyone from making dangerous decisions while confused. Remember, staying put is the correct choice. Rescue teams will reach you as soon as weather permits. You are not forgotten. The static answered him. He cranked the radio, felt the burn deepen in his forearm, ignored it. His fingers were getting cold even inside the station. He blew on them, flexed them, kept them moving. The thermometer on the wall read 5 degrees Celsius. The wood stove was barely holding back the cold now, heat bleeding out of the structure faster than the fire could replace it. Time became a strange thing, measured in crank intervals and transmission schedules. Every 15 minutes, crank the radio. Every 10 minutes, transmit updates. Every 30 minutes, add wood to the stove. The light outside the windows faded toward early winter dusk. The sky a uniform gray-white that merged with the blowing snow until there was no distinction between earth and air. The wind roared against the station walls, rattling the shutters, finding every weakness in the structure. At 4:47 p.m., Dr. Patel's voice cut through the static again, so faint Marcus had to press the speaker against his ear to hear. Station 4. Dispatch reports. Search and rescue team staged. Valley Base. Ready to deploy. First light tomorrow. Weather permitting. Estimate departure 07 tomorrow. Reach hikers by 10 SAO if conditions improve. Marcus transmitted acknowledgement, knowing it might not get through but trying anyway. Station 4 copies. Rescue deployment at first light. I'll continue transmitting location and status updates hourly. Please confirm you're still receiving these transmissions. The response was too broken to understand, just fragments of words in a sea of static. The atmospheric conditions were worsening, or the backup generators were failing, or both. Marcus cranked the radio, transmitted again, kept the channel active. His arm was seriously hurting now, the muscles trembling with fatigue, but he had no choice except to continue. He switched arms, cranking with his left hand, and immediately felt how much weaker and less coordinated it was. The motion was awkward, inefficient, but it worked. He'd alternate arms, share the load, keep going. At 5:30 p.m., he transmitted another survival briefing, adding new information based on the deteriorating conditions. Station 4 emergency broadcast. Time is 17:30 hours. External temperature now -27 and dropping. If you can hear this transmission, be aware that frostbite risk is critical. Check your extremities every 30 minutes. Fingers, toes, nose, ears. If you feel numbness or tingling, warm those areas immediately against your core or another person's body heat. Do not rub frostbitten skin. Do not expose it to rapid temperature changes. Keep your face covered with scarves or balaclavas. If you're sweating inside your layers, remove one layer if possible. Sweat will freeze and conduct heat away from your body. Stay dry. Stay warm. Stay alive. He cranked with his left arm, feeling it burn and shake. Switched back to his right. The pain was constant now, deep in the forearm muscles, radiating up to his shoulder. He had cranked the radio probably 40 times so far. If this continued for 4 hours total, he'd crank it more than 120 times. His arms would be useless by the end, cramping and barely functional. But he'd keep cranking anyway because the alternative was silence, and silence meant death for 3 people on the mountain. The temperature inside the station continued to drop despite the fire. 6 degrees at 6 p.m., 5 degrees at 6:30. Marcus added more wood, stoked the fire to maximum burn rate, but the cold was relentless. He pulled on an extra insulating layer, wrapped a blanket around his shoulders, and kept cranking. The LED on the radio glowed green, steady and reliable, a small circle of light in the gathering darkness. At 6:48 p.m., he tried the handheld VHF again, hoping for any contact. Station 4 to any receiving station. Do you copy? Static. He tried the satellite phone, knowing it was futile but attempting anyway. Dead. No signal. No connection. The storm had isolated him completely. He was alone in the station with a hand-crank radio, transmitting into the void, hoping someone somewhere could hear him. But he kept transmitting. Every 10 minutes like clockwork, calm and clear, giving instructions and updates as if he knew someone was listening. Station 4 emergency broadcast. Time is 19 hours. Hikers have now been in survival situation for approximately 7 hours. If you are maintaining body heat and shelter, you are doing everything right. Rescue teams are staged and ready to deploy at first light. Estimated arrival at your location is 10 hours tomorrow morning. That means roughly 15 more hours. You can survive 15 hours. Stay in your shelter. Keep each other warm. Do not give up. His voice was hoarse now from talking, his throat dry. He drank water from his bottle, rationed it because he didn't know how long he'd need to make it last. The station's water pump was electric and useless without power. He had maybe 2 liters in his water bottles, another 5 gallons in the containers he'd filled that morning. But getting to those meant leaving the desk and the radio, breaking the transmission schedule. At 7:30 p.m., something changed in the static. A brief break in the noise, a flutter of something that might have been a voice. Marcus leaned forward, pressing the speaker against his ear, listening intently. There it was again, faint and broken. Station 4. Barely reading. Still. Transmission. Keep going. It was Dr. Patel, the signal so degraded it was almost unreadable but present. Someone was still listening. Marcus felt a wave of relief so strong it was physical, his hands shaking as he reached for the radio. He cranked it hard, bringing the charge to maximum, and transmitted. Station 4 copies. Signal very weak, but I read you. Confirm you are still receiving my transmissions. Confirming. Very faint. Dispatch says, and rescue standing by. Await weather improvement. Understood. I'll continue transmitting. Tell dispatch the hikers have been out for approximately 8 hours now. If they followed instructions, they should still be viable. Key risks are hypothermia progression in David, frostbite in all 3, and panic decisions if they try to move. Rescue teams need to be prepared for potential cold injuries and altered mental status. The response was too broken to understand. Just noise. But Dr. Patel was there, still listening, still relay information through whatever landline connection was still functioning. Marcus wasn't alone. He cranked the radio again, feeling the muscles in his right forearm seize up, cramping so hard his fingers locked. He forced himself to breathe through it, stretching the forearm, massaging it with his other hand, waiting for the cramp to release. When it finally did, he switched to his left arm and kept cranking. The LED glowed green. He transmitted the next scheduled update. The hours ground forward. 8 p.m., 8:39. Marcus's world narrowed to the cycle of crank and transmit. Add wood to the fire, drink water, crank again. His arms were screaming with fatigue, both of them now alternating between burning pain and deep aching numbness. His hands were clumsy, fingers stiff with cold despite the gloves he'd pulled on. The temperature in the station was down to 3 degrees Celsius, cold enough that his breath fogged in the air, cold enough that moisture was freezing on the inside of the windows. At 9:23 p.m., Dr. Patel's voice cut through one more time, barely audible. Losing power. Generators failing. This may be last transmission. You're doing great. Keep going, the people are listening. Not alone. Then silence. Complete and total. Just the hiss of static on the empty frequency. Marcus sat in the cold station, the hand-crank radio in front of him, and understood he was now truly alone. No more relay to dispatch, no more confirmation anyone was receiving. Just him and the storm and the radio that was old when Jake Reeves's grandfather was using it. He cranked the handle, right arm shaking violently with fatigue, and transmitted. Station 4 emergency broadcast. Time is 21:30 hours. I've lost contact with dispatch and medical center. Communications appear to be down across the region. I'm continuing to transmit on this frequency in case anyone is still monitoring. For the stranded hikers, if you have survived this long, you can survive until morning. It's been approximately 10 hours since you became stranded. Rescue is coming at first light. 5 more hours until dawn. 6 to 7 hours until rescue teams can reach you. You are so close. Don't give up now. His voice cracked on the last words. He paused, drank water, composed himself, and continued. I'm going to keep transmitting through the night, every 10 minutes, every single one. Even if no one hears me, I'll be here, maintaining this channel, keeping this signal alive. You're not alone out there. I'm here. The rescue teams are waiting. We haven't forgotten you, he cranked again. The motion was agony now, muscles burning and trembling, but he forced himself through it. 30 seconds of cranking, 15-minute intervals. He could do this. He had to do this. At 10 p.m., his right arm gave out completely, the muscles simply refusing to respond. He tried to crank and his hand slipped off the handle, numb and weak. He switched to his left, cranked with his offhand, the motion slow and awkward but functional. The LED glowed green. He transmitted the next update, his voice steady despite everything. The cold was becoming serious now. Even with the wood stove burning hot, even wrapped in blankets with extra layers, Marcus was getting genuinely cold. His feet were numb in his boots, his fingers were stiff and clumsy. He stood up, stomped his feet, swung his arms, forced blood to circulate, then sat back down and cranked the radio again. The rhythm had to continue. 15-minute intervals. 10-minute transmissions. He checked his watch. 10:17 p.m. He'd been doing this for almost 8 hours straight. 4 more to go until dawn. Maybe 5. He could make it. At 11 p.m. he transmitted what he realized was becoming a mantra. Station 4 emergency broadcast. Time is 23 hours. 11 hours since initial stranding. 4 to 5 hours until rescue deployment. I'm still here. Still transmitting. The channel is open. Help is coming. His left arm was failing now too, cramping and weak. He massaged it, stretched it, forced himself to keep cranking. The generator coils in the radio spun, the LED glowed, the antenna broadcast his signal into the storm-dark night. Whether anyone heard it didn't matter anymore. The act of transmitting itself had become the point, the commitment to keep trying, to refuse to give up, to maintain hope when everything else had failed. At 11:45 p.m., something changed. The wind sound shifted, the roar diminishing slightly. Marcus looked up, listening carefully. The storm was still intense, but maybe, just maybe, beginning to ease. He checked the barometer on the wall. Pressure was rising. The storm was passing. Not quickly, but passing. By dawn, conditions might be survivable for rescue operations. He cranked the radio, his movements slow and painful, and transmitted. Station 4 emergency broadcast. Time is 23:47 hours. Barometric pressure rising. Storm may be weakening. Rescue teams should prepare for possible early deployment if conditions continue to improve. I'm still maintaining this channel. Midnight came and went. Marcus added more wood to the fire, the last of his easily accessible supply. He'd need to go outside soon to get more from the covered pile, but he delayed it as long as possible. Every moment away from the radio was a moment of dead air on the frequency, a break in the transmission schedule he'd maintained for almost 10 hours. At 12:30 a.m., he forced himself to stop, to move. He pulled on his outer layers, stepped into the brutal cold outside, and loaded his arms with firewood. The wind hit him like a punch, stealing his breath, burning his exposed skin. He stumbled back inside, dumped the wood by the stove, stripped off the frozen outer layers, and returned to the desk. Total time away, maybe 4 minutes. He cranked the radio immediately, brought it back to full charge, and transmitted. The night deepened. 1 a.m., 1:30, 2. Marcus's arms were beyond pain now, past fatigue into a strange, numb exhaustion where the cranking motion happened almost automatically, muscle memory taking over when conscious thought became too difficult. His hands shook continuously, his vision blurred with fatigue, but he kept going. At 2:47 a.m., he transmitted into the darkness. Station 4 emergency broadcast. Time is 2:47 hours. Approximately 14 hours since initial stranding. 3 to 4 hours until dawn. Rescue teams should be preparing for deployment. I'm still here, still transmitting. The channel remains open. 3 a.m. passed. 3:30. 4. The darkness outside the windows remained absolute. Winter night in the mountains where dawn came late and slow. Marcus cranked the radio with movements that were barely coordinated, his arms shaking so badly he could barely grip the handle. He'd lost count of how many times he'd cranked it. More than 200 easily, maybe 250. Each crank was an individual choice to continue, to not give up, to keep the signal alive one more interval. At 4:30 a.m., the handheld VHF suddenly crackled to life, making Marcus jump. A voice cut through the static, clear and strong. Station 4, this is Search and Rescue Team Alpha. Do you copy? Marcus grabbed the radio, his hands fumbling and clumsy. Station 4 copies. Where are you? We're at staging area, Valley Base. Communications just came back online. We've been receiving your transmissions for the last 2 hours. Dispatch patched them through to us. Marcus, we heard everything. We know the situation. We're deploying now. Conditions have improved enough. ETA to hiker's location is approximately 2.5 hours. Can you confirm last known coordinates? Marcus read off the coordinates, his voice shaking with exhaustion and relief. 3 hikers, 1 severely hypothermic, possibly frostbite in all 3. They're in a pit shelter on the exposed ridge. Phone contact lost at approximately 15:17 yesterday. No updates since then. Unknown if they're still viable. Copy all. We're moving fast. Keep that frequency open. We'll update you when we have eyes on target. The rescue team went silent, presumably switching to their operational frequency. Marcus sat at the desk, still cranking the radio, still transmitting updates, but something had changed. The isolation was broken. Help was moving. The long night was ending. At 5:30 a.m., the first gray light began to seep into the eastern sky. Not sunrise yet, but the promise of it. The slow winter dawn that meant the night was finally over. Marcus transmitted his scheduled update, his voice raw and hoarse. Station 4 emergency broadcast. Time is 05:30 hours. Rescue teams are en route to hiker's location. ETA approximately 2 hours. Dawn is breaking. Help is coming. At 6:47 a.m., The radio crackled. Station 4, Search and Rescue Alpha. We have visual on target. 3 people in pit shelter, all alive, all moving. Approaching now. Marcus closed his eyes, feeling something break open in his chest. Alive, all 3. They'd made it through the night. Station 4 copies. Condition assessment? Stand by. The minutes stretched. Marcus cranked the radio, his movements automatic, waiting. At 6:52, the update came. 2 patients ambulatory with assistance, moderate hypothermia and frostbite. 1 patient severe hypothermia, altered mental status, possible serious cold injuries. We're packaging all 3 for evacuation. ETA back to staging area 90 minutes, then immediate transport to medical center. Copy. Be advised, Dr. Patel at the medical center has been monitoring this situation. He'll be expecting you. Roger that. Station 4. Marcus, they said you kept transmitting all night. Said they could hear you in the pit. They had a small emergency radio in one of their packs they didn't mention in their gear list. They heard your instructions, your voice. You kept them from panicking. Probably saved their lives. Marcus sat in the cold station, looking at the hand crank radio on.